I wonder if anyone's got that intro yet. Welcome back, guys, to the Identity Human podcast. That is a childhood favorite of mine, that intro, the whistling thing that I do. And I'm interested to see if anyone knows where that's from. What tune is that? Anyway, moving on. How is everyone doing? Thank you again. Like I said, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to Identity Human podcast. This is episode number 24. So we're 2 away from our first performance goal of getting to 26 episodes. And I feel like it's flown by. We've had a couple of guests on. Ideally, I would like more. I just have to try and understand how to maneuver it around work schedules and everything. And as soon as I do that, then we'll be into it. But if I try and make it too complicated, then remember it starts to increase willpower, organization, everything. And right now, I'm just really enjoying the journey, and I hope you are too. So if you haven't listened to many episodes, I'm just going to remind you that Identity Human podcast is all about trying to figure out who we are, how we work, what our mindset is, looking at identity, being able to really find alignment with yourself to get the best version of you out to the world. So that can cover things like mindset, so growth mindset, resilience, comfort zones, stress zones, energy states, energy levels. We can look at like food, like fasting, carb loading, like performance stuff. We can look at sport. We can look at physical output and parenting and everything that comes with being a human being. So whether you're a kid listening to this because you go like, what's some moments of inspiration? What are some lessons I can learn? Whether you are, in your 20s and you're like, I'm really struggling to find myself because you guys are really way ahead in the awareness scale that anyone else was in your generation. Or you're up to like 30s, you go like parenting, you've just got new jobs, you don't really know where you're going, or you do, and your performance, and you want to go, I want to hang out with Don because I can listen to some really interesting concepts and take myself to the next level. Like that's where I want to go. Or on the other end of the scale, you could be 60 plus retired and gone, I don't really know what I'm doing. I really had a sense of purpose, and I don't. And it's like, well, that's what we're trying to do is the human mind for me is what we're trying to aim at, like deep at source into there. So it's how do we understand that like we're linking inner child to like in a retired person. So whether you're 60, you can still relate to that and identifying what that is that keeps the same. So is that soul? Is that spirit? Is that just biology? And those are the kind of things we'll talk about. And so if you're still listening and entranced by it, then I'm grateful that you're here. Like put some ratings out there, share this to someone that you listen to the episode and share it if you think someone might benefit from it, and give some feedback, things you want to hear about, things that you really enjoy. And yeah, that's kind of just a retouch of to what we're trying to achieve. And I want to do a quick shout out to Leanne. So Leanne, 2 weeks in a row, has informed me that she puts on the podcast first thing in the morning. She's an early riser because she has to go and inspire loads of other people with her gym PT and essentially just improving people's lives. And she's told me that I've uploaded silent episodes, and I've figured out it's because I've been using the wrong microphone when I click record. So I just want to say thank you, Leanne. I appreciate that. 2 weeks in a row. First was a mistake. Second is sloppy. But it's all good, and I appreciate it. So here we go. What are we talking about tonight? So I'm going to layer it up as water anchors. That's we're going to create a whole analogy. But I was coaching someone the other day, and how it came about was we're coaching for performance, trying to up our leadership skills and all that kind of stuff. And I'm trying to impart things that we know, things that we speak about in this podcast, but also individualize it and really get people to understand at a deep level. And they started to get a bit vulnerable, and they started to, get a bit emotional. And they kept saying sorry. And I said, what are you saying sorry for? I said, with all due respect, I'm trying to move you forward, but I can't move you forward if there's something holding you back. And so the analogy I came out and I said, like, if you're listening to this, let's pretend that you are this person that I was coaching, and so you are a ship. Your mind is a ship. The things that you want to do. So you're afloat in this vast ocean, which is the world, and you're trying to find some direction. You could be the captain of that ship in terms of your mind, that inner voice that we talk about. You could have a whole lot of chimps as your crew, but you need to steer it somehow, right? So the first thing we always say, and if in terms of leadership in an organization, is you need a direction, you need vision. And that vision is like, it's like having a rudder. The rudder allows you to steer through storms, steer around waves, steer through big waves. It essentially allows you as the captain to be able to steer your ship wherever you think is best, as long as it's going to a set destination. Because if you don't have that set destination, if you don't have the rudder on your ship, then you might make it somewhere awesome like Hawaii or the world's most resourceful, beautiful, uninhabited island, and you're like, this is amazing. Or you might get stuck in a storm that you can't navigate and your ship gets tipped, or you end up in Antarctica. And if you're into ice baths, that's amazing. And if you're not, then unlucky. So the point is, we want to be able to navigate our lives, our ship to where we want to get to. So people talk about alignment. And honestly, if you find alignment with who you are inside and you align that with what you have around you outside, that's when all of the stuff we talk about comes into one. Like, you are resilient, you go after things, you've got energy, all these things that we're trying to avoid. I think it's due to lack of alignment with who we are. So let's bring it back. You are this ship, right? This huge ship that's meant to perform on seas. Like, you are robust and everything, but it's got no rudder. And let's now put vision. So the first thing we do is like, where do you want to go? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And then we go like, this is where I wanted to do this, what I want to do my whole life. Okay, so we're going to work towards that. Yes, okay, it sounds great. And then you start the engines rolling and the engines start to go. We've got our rudder on there. We know which direction we want to go, but there's something still holding us back. There's something that's still stopping us from taking action. There's something that's keeping us in place. Or we're moving, but it feels like we're putting so much energy into moving that it's like, what's wrong? And we can't quite figure it out. And so back to where we first started with that coaching. And I said, it's okay to let these emotions out. It's okay to let this stuff go, because essentially what we're trying to figure out is, what are your anchors, your water anchors? And what I mean by water anchors is like, they are the things that as you start moving forward in that ship, the water anchors are these, like, they're attached to chains or ropes behind your ship. And as you start to create movement, they start to fill up with water because you're carrying this load with you. And so even the faster you go, the quicker they fill up. And everything that you're keeping behind you, picture them as another water anchor, another anchor. So some people, they are, what do they say, like, cursed by your past, or they keep thinking about their past. They keep thinking about things they can't get away from. That's what I would say is a water anchor. So it's going to always be the thing that's slowing you down. Sometimes you're going to need it. Sometimes you're not. So I said, if you start to release the emotions, if you start to let things go, then picture that as us, like, poking holes in the water anchor, or even better, like cutting those anchors off, so that you can actually free up your ship. You can free up the engines to go quicker, go more efficiently. And all of a sudden, you're not putting in any more effort, but things are just happening. And I think that was a really good example. Is like, the ship needs a vision, which gives you your rudder, your destination point, and then you've got to recognize your anchors. So, have you ever heard of that analogy, like sweeping things under the carpet? Oh, it's fine. That's not affecting me. I'll deal with this. Okay. That's what I consider sweeping it under the carpet. Now, that's all good short term. But if you don't deal with the stuff that you sweep under the carpet, I always say you'll end up tripping up on it, because the more you sweep under the carpet, the bigger the pile gets. That's essentially, in this ship analogy, is the water anchor. It's fine. I'll just chuck that anchor in the back. I don't have to deal with it right now. I'm just going to chuck it in the water. We can't see it. And, it's not really filling up. So it's fine. So that's what it said, like, emotions that you're not dealing with, the things that you're avoiding, that is sweeping things under the carpet. Those are your anchors. So I want, like, that analogy is like, why is it good to face your emotions? Why is it good to face, like, some people come out of therapy feeling so much better, or talking to a friend, or journaling. All of those things are ways of getting off of your mind the anchors that you're holding onto, and allow you to recognize them. And you bring in, things like neuro-linguistic programming, where they just say, let's look at one of those anchors in a different way. Something in your past that's haunted you, something in your past that you feel is traumatic. Let's change that from a trauma to something else, just by changing the way you see it. And a good analogy I actually heard that we talked to the kids the other day is about perspective. Is, if you have an apple and you say to the kid, there's this apple and I hate apples. I think they're disgusting. They make my tongue feel funny. But You give that apple to someone else and they go, oh, I love apples, right? Apples are so sweet and delicious, and the way they crunch when you bite into them, and they just like, they just make it feel so satisfying when you bite into the apple. And what I said to was Laurie, that I said it to my daughter. I said, you have to understand that in life, people are going to judge the apple in a different way. Some are going to like it, some are not. And if you can see that you might be the apple, and some people are going to like you and some people are not, you have to understand that like an apple is just an apple. And we've said this before, just about like choosing emotion and everything. But it's the same with things in our past, is if we can sum up the courage to face those things and actually go, okay, if I can see that event in the past as the apple, but the emotion that I take with it as my perception of that apple, how could someone else see that same apple? I hope you're still with me, in a different way, so that it lets me see it differently. That will allow me to start to snip those anchors, because they actually aren't something that drags me back anymore. And I think that's key. That's why we've got to be brave and look back there. So I just want to reinforce, I've said, if the anchors are down, the engine works hard, but you go nowhere. And that's why sometimes people just feel like they are absolutely giving it their all, but not making any progress in life. And at that point, it's like, let's look back and see what's holding you back. So vision's important to get the engines going. But what we need then is self-awareness. That's needed for, like, the self-awareness is now, everyone goes, oh, you need to be self-aware. It's like, what is self-awareness for? Self-awareness is there to help you to identify your own anchors. And if you can identify your anchors, you can slip them away and you can go a lot quicker. And sometimes those anchors have a thick old chain and you're going to need a specialist tool. Sometimes it's just a rope. And once you identify it, you can get rid of it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, so it doesn't really matter how long this episode takes, is I've come up with a model of circular thinking that kind of ties into this, because I thought, well, everyone says, yeah, I'm self-aware. But I mean, I've gone on the journey and you see that there's depth. There's so much more depth than we originally think. And I always explain it like most people will get a depth of like 5 out of 10 if we're going to put on a rating scale. Like, oh yeah, they're self-aware. They know their issues. This is how I come across. But that's only a 5 out of 10, because there's still ego that they have to break through. There's still so many barriers that they have to go through before they get even more self-aware. But some people go, yeah, I'm really self-aware. I know who I am. This is how I come across. And yet they're still blind to so much. It's obvious to others, but not to them. And so I said, like, how do I identify the phase that we're at? So I can't remember what book this was in, but it was brilliant then. And I came across it again because I'd written it down and I was organized in the office and came up again. So it basically goes like this. There's 6 steps to, now what I'm going to connect this to is this circular thinking model. So not model, the circular thinking empowering principle. So if just as a reminder, linear thinking is that, like, if X, then Y. So I tried this, it didn't work, therefore it doesn't work. Circular thinking is if X, then Y, but then if X, then Z. So sometimes if I keep trying, I'm going to get different outcomes. So circular thinking is knowing that you're going to do something and it's going to work, and you're going to do something again and it might not work. And you're going to become self-aware, and then you're going to feel like you've done all of this self-awareness work. And after a year, you're going to feel like you're exactly the same person you were a year ago. And you're going to like, it doesn't work. That's where like linear thinking would stop you from trying, where circular thinking goes, well, I know I feel like I'm the same person I was a year ago, but if I keep going, I'm going to be slightly different. And if I keep going, I'm going to figure out what it is that's the same, and I'm going to move up on that. And I think that's where I've always kept circular thinking to that example, circular versus linear thinking. But now I've got 6 steps to identify circular, to like really help people hone down on circular thinking. So step 1, we live. Okay, some people just get stuck on step 1. No self-awareness, we live. Step 2 is we fail. Okay, so we make mistakes, right? Now, some people stop there. Oh, I made a mistake, so linear thinking. I made a mistake, therefore I'm not going to make another. I failed, therefore I'm not going to try again. Step 3 is we learn from the mistakes. Okay, and so at this point, this is when we go, oh, I'm going to keep going. So we learn from the mistake, then we go back to step 1. Now we live, we fail again, we learn from the mistakes, and we just keep repeating that. Some people will repeat that over and over and over and over again until we recognize that there's step 4. Now, what is step 4? Step 4 is basically repeating steps 1 to 3 until we acquire wisdom. Okay, that's why I did that. Okay, now I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to do it slightly differently. And we go again and we do it and we make different mistakes and we just keep learning. And that's fine. Some people are stuck in that loop. Step 1 to 3, repeat. Step 4, learn, repeat. Step 1 to 3, repeat over and over again. Circular thinking. Now, what I really like about this is step 5. So step 5 is we realize that the wisdom in step 4 is not really wisdom at all. And by realizing that it's not really wisdom at all, we therefore gain new wisdom. And it's higher wisdom. So this is where it's like, okay, now we're breaking through that, like, you know, when I initially said level 5 in terms of like awareness, like, oh, I'm aware. But when we recognize that the awareness that we've gained isn't actually that great, isn't actually that wise, then we take a step back and become even more curious. And that's where it's like, which creates new wisdom. Now, with this new wisdom, we then would repeat step 1 to 3. Now, step 6 is essentially that is step 6 is go back all the way back to step 1 and repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way back. And I think that goes back into like how I think our self-awareness journey, our self-development journey would actually look if you were to put in a diagram. And I've actually drawn this a few times, is that circular thinking is like you just keep going in circles. You just keep going in circles until you make a little bit of progress. And then your circle touch points is slightly more forward. And you keep doing that. And you keep doing that. All that is gaining new real wisdom, not just wisdom, but that like level 2 wisdom. And if we're aware of it, it then generally does happen. You're just like, oh, I can't believe for the last year I've thought I was self-aware and I thought I knew the stuff. But now that I've gone through that all, wow, I was way off. And there was I'm gonna Google it quickly, but 1938, theory versus knowledge. So John Dewey's theory, the Dewey's theory, okay? And he said, and what I really like is he's done it in 1938. Whoop to do, what a great guy. But he said, it's basically the principle of you can have knowledge and you can have experience. And so knowledge is out of a book. Knowledge is like, yeah, I know this stuff through and through, but you've never lived it, right? And so he was saying like experience is, what does he say? Education theory. I'm just going to read it quickly. He talked about experiential learning, the idea that we can learn best by actively engaging with the material rather than passively listening to lectures or memorizing facts. So essentially what he's saying is like, you've got knowledge and then you've got experience. And if you can combine the two, that's when you get a real source of like in-depth understanding, how you can disseminate the context, the correct context with the things that you're trying to apply. And I really like that. So I think that that's essentially what like level 5 wisdom is where you may know, or you may just have the experience and not have any knowledge about that experience. But when you can get knowledge about the experience and combine the two, that's when you get a deeper level of wisdom. And even then, you still have to go and repeat steps 1 to 5. Okay, and I know that this gets over and over again, and without diagrams and interactions, it might be a lot to follow. But I really like that. So I hope that you've been able to follow along with the circular thinking. And basically what I'm saying is, if you think you know stuff and you think you're self-aware, check again, be more curious, and just see what you might know, but you might not know. See how maybe your experience is different to someone else and what knowledge they can apply and what you can learn from them. And then you recognize that, you know, you're going to gain some new wisdom that way, and you're going to keep going. And that's just the cycle of life. That's just the journey we're on. And that's incredible, because it means that there's this depth. There's a depth that we can really go after. And I think that should be quite inspiring. So that brings us to 19 minutes. And I've always said I'm not going to fill time just for the sake of filling time. That is what I wanted to speak about tonight. And I'm happy. And if you're still listening, I'm really grateful for you, and I appreciate you and your time that you've given up to stay here, listen, learn, hopefully apply. Or you might even have just listened to this and gone, oh, that doesn't really apply to me. And then you're going to meet someone, and that someone's going to need to hear this message, because this message is not mine. I just am a voice that's communicating it. And then you're going to pass it on to them. It's going to make a difference in their lives. And it's down to that, like, you never know how what you do is going to make a difference for someone else. It doesn't matter how small it is. So just try. So whether this is for you or not for you, that's okay. Receive the message and carry it with you and pass it on when you know someone needs it. So with that in mind, I'm going to remind you, I'll look after you. I always say it. Oh, we just got to rewind. I'll look after me for you, and you look after you for me. Because Ubuntu, we are who we are through others. So I want to raise myself up so I can help you raise yourself up. And then I want you to raise yourself up to help me raise me up. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's the way. No. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. I really appreciate you. Have a great day. Have a great week. And we will be back on in a week's time. Stay frosty or something. I'm trying to think of like a sign off line. Stay frosty. That's quite cool because I like ice pods.